Yes, I'm very worried about the U.S. economy. I expect that next year we might have a recession in the United States. So even the downward revision of the IMF to 1.9% growth for the U.S. and the revision downwards for Europe and other countries, to me, look too optimistic.
Do you think that this summer crisis has affected the credibility of the U.S. financial system?
Yeah, there are severe problems in the U.S. financial system, poor regulation supervision that allowed this reckless lending, whether it was done in the subprime market or other mortgage markets, in the CDO market, into the leveraged loan market, the LBOs. So we've had poor regulation and supervision. The regulators were asleep at the wheel when these reckless lending practices did occur.
There is a lot of talking about the SIVs and the chance that they could be exported also in Europe. Do you think it's feasible?
Oh, those SIVs, many of them were based actually in Europe. Citigroup has 7 of them. They're not based in the US, they're based out of London. And I think those are a serious problem. It was a really bit of a scam. It was a kind of Enron style of special purpose vehicles of taking off balance sheet lots of risk and not avoiding capital requirements and then funding it with very, very short-term asset-backed commercial paper. I think those were dangerous things, should have not been allowed in the first place.
So do you think they're going to be developed even more here in the United States, given Paulson's recent opinion about this?
I don't think they're going to be developed anymore. I think that SIV market is kind of dead. If anything, the roll-off of the asset-backed commercial paper is going to squeeze it. Of course, now they're trying to do this other scheme that is a bit far-fetched of creating a super conduit where to put some of the assets. I don't think that's going to work. So I think that particular financial instrument should have been forbidden in the first place, and I think regulation will change it in order to make it very, very hard to have these off-balance sheet kind of schemes.
Do you think that given the current situation, financial situation, the central banks will have to take action? Do you expect a more expansive monetary policies?
Yeah, the Fed has already cut rates. I expect them, as the U.S. has a risk of a recession, is going to cut rate even more. But in my view, whatever the Fed is going to do is going to be too little too late, meaning if the condition for a hard landing materialize, I think that what the Fed can do through its easing is just to put a floor on the recession. It's not going to be able to avoid the recession. We have a glut of homes, of housing, of consumer durables, of autos, of motor vehicles. It takes time to work it out. Lower interest rates are not going to rescue the economy.
And in Europe, interest rates will be unchanged this year, triggering the euro appreciation. A big problem above all for France, for Italy, while other countries like Germany are less preoccupied about this. What is the impact of weak dollar on the EU economy then altogether?
A weakening of the dollar hurts, of course, competitiveness in Europe that has been appreciating the euro already too much. And there are other negative headwinds of the European economy. In addition to the strength of the euro, there is the fact that there's now a credit crunch in financial market, leading the banks to tighten things. There has been a slowdown of economic activity, and therefore I worry the combination of all those factors might lead to a severe economic slowdown in Europe as well.
In the US, on the contrary, the weak dollar helped the trade balance. Can the dollar still ride a weak currency, and what is the risk on the long term?
Yeah, at the margin, of course, a weaker dollar can help to reduce the U.S. current account deficit. But the problem is that the weak dollar might lead to imported inflation, might lead to foreigners worried about capital losses on dollar assets and less willing to finance the U.S. current account deficit. And therefore, when the Fed cut rates that day, the dollar went down and long-term interest rates went up. So there's a risk that if this aggressive easing of the Fed, it might lead to a disorderly fall of the dollar and a sharp increase in long rates. That's something you have to worry about in the case of the U.S.
Both Europe and the U.S. are worried about the yuan weakness. What is more important for a balanced currency market, to back a strong dollar or a stronger yuan?
Well, the strong dollar doesn't make sense because the dollar has to fall. It has fallen already a lot relative to floaters like the euro, the British pounds. It has to fall more relative to the Chinese currency and the Asian ones that have been heavily managed. Of course, that's a political decision that China is taking. China is resisting the appreciation of the yuan. The G7 today will push for that to occur. It's not likely the Chinese are going to follow. They're going to follow their own national interest. That means probably very slow path of Chinese currency appreciation.
And in Japan, do you think the yen is too weak given the country growth? What should the central bank do?
In Japan, economic growth has been weak in spite of all the easing and in spite of the yen being weak. The weakness of the yen is going to remain as long as the Bank of Japan maintain interest rates close to zero, and as long as there are no signals of a clear strengthening of the economy. So those are the key factors, whether growth is going to be sustained and whether the BOJ is going to increase rates. Otherwise, the weakness of the yen, apart from periods of time in which there is a unwinding of carry trade because of panic and turmoil, may continue for a while.
What is the biggest news you expect to come out of these annual meetings?
They're not usually big surprises. I think that the two key issues to look at is what the statement of the G7 is going to be about the Chinese currency, how much they're going to push on China to let its currency move a lot, and therefore we'll also see how much they think about this financial market turmoil and worries about them, and which kind of new regulatory and policy actions might be taken to address these questions. Those are the key things that we'll have to think about.
To look at. Thank you.